The stars look different out here, Dr. Sarah Chun thought as she stared through the window of her small cabin. 3 months ago, she had left Earth on what everyone called the most important mission in human history. Now, her ship was just 2 days away from the Cathari homeworld. Sarah was not a soldier or a politician. She was a cultural anthropologist who had spent 20 years studying how different societies communicated and understood each other. When the government needed someone to lead humanity's first real diplomatic mission to an alien empire, they had chosen her. Sometimes she still wondered if that was a good decision. She turned away from the window and picked up her tablet. The screen showed files about the Cathari, the species she would soon meet. Sarah had read these files dozens of times, but she always found something new to worry about. The Cathari Empire controlled 47 star systems. They had been traveling through space for over 3,000 years when humans were still learning to make fire. Their technology was far beyond Earth's, and their military could crush humanity's entire fleet without breaking a sweat. But they had agreed to meet with Earth's delegation, which was something. Sarah scrolled through the cultural notes. The Cathari were described as arthropod-like beings. They had hard outer shells called exoskeletons, multiple arms, and large compound eyes. The files had no pictures, which Sarah found strange. Usually, diplomatic briefings included images, videos, anything to help prepare the team. One section of the notes made Sarah pause every time she read it. It was highlighted in red, marked as important. The Cathari consider themselves aesthetically inferior to most spacefaring species. Avoid discussions about physical appearance. Do not comment on their looks, even positively, as this may be interpreted as mockery or pity. Sarah frowned at the warning. She had dealt with sensitive cultural issues before, but this seemed unusual. Why would such a powerful species care so much about how they looked? And why would they think compliments were mockery? A knock on her door interrupted her thoughts. "Come in," she called. Lieutenant Marcus Webb stepped inside. He was her military advisor, though his main job was to make sure the delegation stayed safe. "We just got word from the Cathari Palace," he said. "They're sending an escort ship to guide us in tomorrow morning." "That's good," Sarah said. "Any changes to the schedule?" "No changes. We'll dock at the orbital palace, then meet Queen Estiora 2 hours later." Marcus paused, looking uncomfortable. "Dr. Chun, have you thought about what we should do if they really are, hard to look at?" Sarah set down her tablet. "Marcus, I've seen a lot of different things in my career. I've lived with tribes in the Amazon, studied communities in the Arctic, worked with people from every continent on Earth. Different doesn't mean ugly. These aren't people from Earth, though. These are aliens. Bugs, basically. They're intelligent beings who built an empire while our ancestors were living in caves," Sarah said firmly. "We're going to treat them with respect, no matter what they look like. Make sure everyone on the team understands that." Marcus nodded and left. Sarah knew he meant well, but his attitude worried her. If her own team was already nervous about the Cathari's appearance, what did that say about how other species had treated them? The next morning, Sarah and her 5-person team gathered in the ship's main bay. Besides Marcus, there was Dr. James Foster, a xenobiologist who would study Cathari science. Dr. Yuki Tanaka was their technology specialist. Commander Lisa Rodriguez would handle security protocols. And young Peter Kim, fresh out of university, was there to document everything for Earth's historical records. Through the bay windows, they watched as a Cathari ship approached. It was beautiful in a way Sarah had not expected. The hull seemed to be made of a crystalline material that caught the light from the nearby star and split it into rainbow colors. The ship moved with smooth precision, like a dancer in zero gravity. "That's incredible," Peter whispered. His camera already recording. The ship docked smoothly. Sarah took a deep breath and straightened her formal blue suit. "Remember, We're representing all of humanity here. Be respectful, be honest, and follow my lead. Let's make a good impression." The airlock doors opened with a soft hiss. 2 Kethari soldiers stood on the other side, and Sarah got her first real look at the species she had traveled so far to meet. They were tall, maybe 7 feet high, with bodies covered in what looked like polished armor, but was actually their natural exoskeleton. The shells had a pale blue color with patterns that seemed to shift in the light. Each soldier had 4 arms, moving in a way that seemed both alien and graceful. Their eyes were large and multifaceted, like gemstones cut by a master jeweler. Sarah felt Marcus tense beside her, but she stepped forward calmly. "Greetings," she said in Kethari, using the phrases she had practiced for months. "We are honored to be here." The soldier on the left tilted his head slightly. When he spoke, his voice came through a translator device on his chest. "Welcome to Kethari Space, humans. I am Captain Dexal. Please follow us to the palace." They walked through corridors that seemed to grow from the walls rather than being built. Everything had a smooth, organic quality to it. Soft bioluminescent lights pulsed gently along the ceiling, creating patterns that Sarah found mesmerizing. "It's like being inside a living thing," Yuki whispered. Captain Dexal heard her. "The palace is partially biological," he explained. "It grows and adapts to our needs. Your species builds with dead materials, yes? Stone and metal?" "Mostly," Sarah agreed. "This is very different." "It's beautiful." The captain said nothing, but Sarah thought she saw his posture shift slightly. She could not read Kethari body language yet, but something about his reaction seemed sad. They reached a large set of doors carved with intricate designs. Captain Dexal stopped and turned to face them. "Beyond these doors is the audience chamber. Queen Halara waits inside. Remember to bow when you enter. Do not speak unless she addresses you first. And please," he paused, "do not stare. We know we are difficult for other species to look upon." Before Sarah could respond, the doors opened. The audience chamber beyond was vast and filled with soft, colored light. And there, on a raised platform at the far end, sat the Queen of the Kethari Empire. Sarah's breath caught in her throat, but not for the reason the captain seemed to expect. Queen Shlara was stunning. There was no other word for it. She sat on a throne that seemed to be made of the same crystalline material as the palace walls, but her own body outshone it completely. Her exoskeleton was a deep amber color that caught the light and turned it into dancing patterns of gold and orange. She was larger than the soldiers, maybe 8 feet tall, with 4 arms that were decorated with what looked like natural engravings in the shell itself. Her compound eyes were the most striking feature, large and dark like polished obsidian, reflecting the lights of the room in thousands of tiny points. Sarah remembered to bow, and her team followed her lead. When they straightened, the queen was watching them with those impossible eyes. "Welcome, humans, to my world." The queen's voice was surprisingly soft, flowing through the translator with a musical quality. "I am Shlara, ruler of the Kethari Empire. I hope your journey was not too unpleasant." "Your Majesty, the journey was fine," Sarah replied. "We are grateful for your invitation." "Grateful, yes." The queen shifted in her seat, and Sarah noticed something odd in her tone. "I must apologize in advance for any discomfort my appearance may cause you. I understand that most species find the Kethari form troubling to observe. Please try to overlook it as we conduct our business." Sarah blinked in surprise. The queen had just apologized for how she looked. Before Sarah could respond, Shlara continued speaking, gesturing to the chamber around them. "This is our audience hall, where we receive visiting delegations. Or rather, where we would receive them if any species actually wanted to visit us." The queen's tone was matter-of-fact, but there was something bitter underneath. You humans are the first to accept our invitation in 40 years. 40 years, Dr. Foster said, then quickly looked embarrassed for speaking out of turn. The Queen did not seem offended. Yes, we extend many invitations. Few are accepted. Most species prefer to conduct their diplomacy through long-distance communications. It saves them from having to look at us in person. She said this calmly, as if discussing the weather. Sarah felt a knot forming in her stomach. The briefing files had mentioned that the Ketheri were sensitive about their appearance, but this was much worse than she had expected. The Queen was not just sensitive. She seemed to have completely accepted that she was ugly. "Please, sit," Shlara said, gesturing to chairs that rose from the floor itself. The human delegation sat, and the Queen began the formal part of the meeting. "You have come to discuss a cultural exchange treaty, yes? Your species wishes to share art, music, literature with my people?" "Yes, Your Majesty," Sarah confirmed. "We believe that cultural exchange is the foundation of good relations between civilizations." How optimistic. The Queen's tone was dry. The Voltorians said something similar 200 years ago. They promised cultural exchanges, artistic collaborations, educational programs. Then they saw us in person at the treaty signing. They completed the bare minimum required by the agreement and never contacted us again. Sarah's team exchanged uncomfortable glances. This was not going the way any of them had expected. The Queen continued, listing example after example. "The Mrashi have beautiful fur, you know? Soft and silver, like moonlight. When their delegation visited, they requested that we meet in rooms with dim lighting. They said it was for religious reasons, but their discomfort was obvious." Shlara held up one of her forearms, examining it in the light. "The Quarians are gelatinous beings, translucent and flowing. They can change their shape at will. When they first encountered my people, their ambassador actually shuddered. I remember that quite clearly. A being made of jelly, who looks like a blob of slime to most species, found us repulsive." "Your Majesty," Sarah started. But the Queen was not finished. Even the scroll, who are essentially rocks with consciousness, seemed uncomfortable around us. Rocks, Ambassador Chun. Living stones found the Ketheri difficult to be near. The Queen's voice remained calm and controlled, but Sarah could see the tension in her posture. "We have hard shells where others have soft skin. Multiple limbs instead of 2 or 4. Eyes that do not blink the way other species expect. We understand. We are aware of how we appear to the rest of the galaxy." The Queen stood from her throne and walked down the steps toward them. Her movements were fluid and precise, each of her forearms moving in perfect coordination. "So you see, Ambassador, we do not have high hopes for this cultural exchange. We have learned not to expect much from other species when it comes to genuine friendship or understanding." She stopped a few feet from Sarah's chair. "But we are willing to try. The treaty you propose is reasonable. If your people can tolerate working with us long enough to complete the exchange program, we will consider it a success." Sarah stood up to meet the Queen's gaze. Up close, she could see even more details in the Halara's exoskeleton. There were tiny, intricate patterns etched into the surface, like natural artwork. The amber color had subtle variations, darker in some places and lighter in others, creating depth and dimension. "Your Majesty, may I speak frankly?" Sarah asked. "You may. I've been listening to you apologize for your appearance since we entered this room. You've called yourself troubling, repulsive, difficult to look at. You've listed all the ways other species have rejected you." Sarah took a breath. "But you haven't asked us what we actually think." The Queen tilted her head slightly. "I assumed your politeness was professional courtesy. Humans are diplomatic, from what we understand. You would not wish to offend your host." "We are diplomatic," Sarah agreed. "But that doesn't mean we're lying. Before the Queen could respond, Marcus spoke up. Your Majesty, I was nervous about meeting you. I'll be honest about that. But it wasn't because I thought you'd be ugly. It was because I'd never met an alien before. Any alien. I didn't know what to expect. Yuki nodded. The way you move is fascinating from a technical standpoint. 4 arms in perfect coordination requires incredible neural processing. It's actually quite impressive. Peter, who had been quietly filming, added, My camera loves you, Your Majesty. The way the light refracts through your exoskeleton creates effects that are nearly impossible to capture. You're like a living prism. The Queen was silent for a long moment. Her compound eyes moved from one human to another, as if trying to detect deception. You are being kind. Perhaps you're a better actor than the other species. We're not acting, Sarah said firmly. Your Majesty, has anyone ever told you that you're beautiful? The Queen's entire body went still. The room fell into complete silence. Sarah could hear her own heartbeat in the quiet. Finally, Shallora spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. What did you say? Sarah met the Queen's gaze steadily. I asked if anyone has ever told you that you're beautiful. Because you are. Shallora has 4 arms moved in a strange, uncertain gesture. Ambassador Chun, there's no need for diplomatic flattery. I appreciate what you are trying to do, but false compliments are worse than honest silence. I'm not flattering you, Sarah said. She took a step closer to the Queen. When you walked down those steps, I watched the way you moved. Every motion was graceful and deliberate. Your 4 arms work together like a symphony. On Earth, we have dancers who train their whole lives to move half as smoothly as you do naturally. Ambassador, let me finish, please. Sarah's voice was gentle but insistent. Your exoskeleton catches the light and turns it into patterns that shift and change. We have a natural phenomenon on Earth called the aurora borealis, the northern lights. It's one of the most beautiful things in nature, and it looks like colored light dancing across the sky. That's what I thought of when I first saw you. The Queen stood frozen, her body language completely still. Sarah could not tell what she was thinking, but she pressed on. Your eyes, Sarah continued. They're like jewels. On Earth, we cut stones into facets to make them sparkle and reflect light. Your eyes already do that naturally. And those patterns on your shell, the ones that look like engravings, they're incredible. Did they form naturally, or are they decorative? They form as we age, Shallora said slowly. The patterns are unique to each individual. They grow deeper and more complex over time. That's amazing, Peter said, still filming. So they're like fingerprints, but beautiful fingerprints that everyone can see. Dr. Foster leaned forward in his chair. Your Majesty, from a biological standpoint, your species is remarkably well designed. The exoskeleton provides protection while still allowing fluid movement. The multiple limbs give you capabilities that species with only 2 arms could never achieve. And the compound eyes likely give you a much wider field of vision than our simple eyes. These are technical observations, the Queen said, but her voice was uncertain now. Not aesthetic ones. Form and function are connected, Yuki added. Something that works well is beautiful in its own way. Your palace, this room, the way everything flows together. It's not just efficient, it's art. Shallora looked at each of them in turn. You are all saying these things now, in this moment. But in time, you will grow tired of looking at us. You will find excuses to communicate from a distance. You will finish your treaty obligations and leave, just like all the others. Sarah felt a surge of frustration, not at the Queen, but at all the species that had made her feel this way. Your Majesty, can I tell you something about humans? If you wish. We have a complicated history with beauty, Sarah said. For a long time, Different groups of humans thought their own way of looking was the right way, and anyone who looked different was wrong. People with dark skin were treated badly by people with light skin. People with different face shapes or body types were called ugly. It took us centuries to learn a simple truth. Beauty isn't one thing. It's many things. She gestured to her team. I'm Chinese American. Marcus is black. Yuki is Japanese. Lisa is Mexican. Peter is Korean. A few hundred years ago, some humans would have said we're all too different to work together. But we learned. We had to learn because our planet was dying from our stupidity and hate. We learned to see beauty in diversity. But we are not diverse humans, the Queen said. We are not human at all. No, you're not, Sarah agreed. You're something new to us. Something we've never seen before. And yes, you're different from us. Very different. But different doesn't mean ugly. Sarah walked even closer to the Queen until she was standing right in front of her. On Earth, we have creatures called insects. For a long time, many humans thought they were disgusting. But then we started really looking at them. We saw the metallic colors on a beetle's shell. We noticed the delicate patterns on a butterfly's wings. We watched the geometric perfection of a spider's web. We learned to see the beauty that was there all along. You are comparing us to your insects, Shlara said flatly. I'm comparing the process of learning to see, Sarah corrected. When you expect something to be ugly, you only notice the ugly parts. But when you look with open eyes, you see what's really there. She paused. Your Majesty, did the other species ever really look at you? Or did they decide you were ugly before they even met you? The Queen was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly she said, the briefing files most species receive about the Cathari include descriptions that emphasize our arthropod characteristics. Words like chitinous, segmented, antennae. The files are technically accurate, but they create an image in the reader's mind before any meeting occurs. So they decided you were ugly before they saw you. Marcus said, perhaps? The Queen moved to a window that overlooked her planet below. Or perhaps we truly are as unappealing as they think, and you humans are simply better at hiding your discomfort. Your Majesty, look at me, Sarah said. The Queen turned. I'm not uncomfortable. I'm not pretending. When I say you're beautiful, I mean it with complete honesty. You want proof? Fine. Let me tell you something that might get me in trouble with my own government. Sarah took a deep breath. Before we left Earth, I had nightmares about this meeting. Not because I thought you'd be ugly, but because I was afraid I'd mess up the diplomacy and ruin humanity's chance at joining the galactic community. I was afraid I'd use the wrong word or make the wrong gesture. I practiced Cathari phrases until my tongue hurt. I studied your culture until I could barely sleep. She smiled slightly. You know what I didn't prepare for? For you to be so convinced of your own ugliness that you wouldn't believe a genuine compliment. That never occurred to me, because when I finally saw pictures of Cathari architecture and art in the classified files, my first thought was these beings understand beauty in a way humans are still learning. There are no pictures in the files we sent you, the Queen said sharply. Not in the files you sent, no. But Earth's deep space probes have been taking photographs of Cathari structures for 20 years. Low-resolution, distant images, but enough to see your aesthetic sense. Sarah pulled out her tablet and showed the Queen several images. These are your orbital stations. Look at them. They're not just functional, they're gorgeous. Shlara stared at the images. These photographs they make our stations look more elegant than I remember them being. Or maybe you've stopped seeing them clearly, Sarah suggested. Maybe you've been told you're ugly so many times that you believe it, even when you look at your own creations. The Queen's arms trembled slightly. She turned away from Sarah, facing the window again. When she spoke, Her voice was softer than before. "If what you say is true, if you genuinely see beauty in us, then you are the first species to feel this way in 3,000 years of galactic contact." "Maybe we're the first to say it out loud," Sarah replied. "Or maybe we're the first to look close enough to see it." The room fell silent again. The Queen stood at the window, her reflection faint in the glass. Sarah waited, knowing that she had said everything she could. The rest was up to Shlara. The silence stretched for nearly a full minute. Then Queen Shlara turned from the window and made a gesture with her upper right arm. Immediately, the Ketheri guards and advisors who had been standing silently along the walls began to file out of the room. "Your Majesty?" one of them asked uncertainly. "Leave us," Shlara said quietly. "I wish to speak with the humans alone." When the doors closed and only Sarah's team remained, the Queen seemed to deflate slightly. She moved away from her throne and sat on the edge of the raised platform, a posture that seemed much less formal and regal. "What I am about to tell you is not in any official histories," she began. "It is not something we share with outsiders. But if you truly mean what you have said, then perhaps you deserve to know the truth." Sarah and her team waited, not moving. The Queen looked down at her own hands, all four of them. 3,000 years ago, when the Ketheri first developed faster than light travel, we were excited. Naive, perhaps, but excited. We thought we would find friends among the stars. We thought other intelligent species would be curious about us, eager to learn and share knowledge. The Queen's voice was heavy with old pain. Instead, we found disgust. She stood and began to pace slowly. "The first species we encountered were the Voltorians. They are tall and elegant, with pale skin and large eyes. By their standards, and apparently the standards of most species in the galaxy, they are beautiful. When they saw us, they tried to hide their reaction. But we could see it in their body language, hear it in their voices. We repulsed them. We thought it was just them," Shlara continued. "Surely not every species would react the same way. So we kept exploring, kept reaching out. The Mrashi, the Quarians, the Skrull, the Tendari, the Zillions, every species we met had the same response. Some were polite about it. Some were cruel. But all of them made it clear that we were ugly by galactic standards." Sarah felt her heart breaking as she listened. "How did you cope with that?" "At first, we tried to change ourselves," the Queen admitted. "Some Ketheri covered their exoskeletons with cloth. Others had their shells carved and polished to look more like the smooth skin of other species. A few even underwent painful surgical procedures to reduce the number of their limbs or alter their eye structure." "That's horrible," Yuki whispered. "It was," Shlara agreed. "And it did not work. No matter how much we changed, we were still fundamentally different. Still arthropod-like. Still wrong." She made a bitter gesture. "Eventually, we stopped trying to change. We accepted what the galaxy had decided about us." The Queen walked to a wall panel and touched it. A holographic display appeared, showing a star map. "You asked why we are so powerful despite being shunned. This is why." She highlighted dozens of systems. "We could not make friends, so we made ourselves necessary. We developed the best technology, created the strongest military, built the most efficient trade networks. Species did not want to socialize with us, but they needed us. So we became indispensable." "But you were never accepted," Sarah said softly. "No, we were tolerated, used, sometimes respected for our capabilities, but never welcomed, never embraced." The Queen turned off the display. Cultural exchange programs were offered to us precisely once by the Voltorians, 200 years ago. As I mentioned, it failed immediately. Since then, we stopped trying. We invited others to visit us, knowing they would refuse. It became a formality. We expected rejection. Marcus spoke up. Then, why did you agree to meet with us? Why not just reject humanity's application like you've been rejected? The Queen was quiet for a moment. I was going to, she admitted. When your application came through, my first instinct was to refuse. Why should humans benefit from cultural exchange when the Kethri have been denied it for so long? Why should we help you when no one has helped us? What changed your mind? Sarah asked. Curiosity, perhaps. Or maybe just exhaustion. Shlara sat down again. Humanity is new to faster-than-light travel. You have only been exploring space for a few decades. I wondered if perhaps you had not yet learned to hate us the way the others do. I thought maybe, just maybe, you would be different. She looked at Sarah. And then I met you, and I waited for the inevitable disgust. I tried to prepare you for it, to acknowledge my appearance so you would not feel uncomfortable addressing it. But instead of agreement or polite silence, She trailed off, seeming unable to finish the sentence. We told you the truth, Sarah finished for her. Perhaps. Or perhaps you are very good liars. But there was less certainty in the Queen's voice. Now Dr. Foster cleared his throat. Your Majesty, may I show you something? He pulled out his own tablet. I'm a xenobiologist. I study alien life forms. Before we left Earth, I was given access to all the data we had on Kethri biology. Do you know what my first reaction was? I can imagine, the Queen said dryly. Probably not. Foster turned his tablet to show her pages of notes and diagrams. I was jealous. Your species has biological advantages that humans can only dream of. Your exoskeleton provides natural armor and protection that our soft skin could never match. Your forearms give you multitasking abilities we can't replicate without tools. Your compound eyes can detect light spectrums we can't even see. He scrolled through more images. And aesthetically? Your chitinous structure naturally produces patterns and colors that humans spend millions trying to replicate in art and architecture. The way your shells refract light is a physical property we've tried to copy in our buildings and can't quite get right. You're not just beautiful, Your Majesty. You're efficient beauty. Your evolution and art combined. The Queen stared at the tablet, then at Foster. You studied my people and felt jealousy? Absolutely. Evolution gave you advantages it didn't give us. That seems unfair. Foster smiled. Though I suppose we got our own advantages. Soft skin is terrible for protection, but great for fine touch sensitivity. Trade-offs, you know? Sarah saw something shift in the Queen's posture. It was subtle, but it was there. Shlara stood and walked to where Sarah sat. Ambassador Chun, if what you and your team have said is true, if humans genuinely do not find the Kethri repulsive, then this changes things. Changes them how? Sarah asked. It means that for the first time in 3,000 years, the Kethri might actually have a cultural exchange with meaning behind it. Not just a formality or a transaction, but a genuine sharing between species who respect each other. The Queen's voice grew stronger. It means that perhaps, just perhaps, the galaxy's judgment of my people is not universal truth. It is cultural bias. It absolutely is, Sarah said firmly. Your Majesty, beauty standards vary wildly even among humans. What one culture finds attractive, another might find strange. We've learned slowly and painfully that these standards are not facts. They're opinions, and they can change. Shlara looked at her reflection in the polished wall panel. For a long time, she said nothing. Then, very quietly, she spoke. I have not looked at myself with anything but shame in over a century. I became queen 50 years ago, and I have spent every day of my reign believing that I was a disgust to the galaxy. She touched her own exoskeleton, tracing the patterns on her arm. If you are telling the truth, if you genuinely see beauty here, then perhaps I have been wrong. Perhaps we have all been wrong. Sarah stood and walked to stand beside the queen. It's not easy to unlearn something you've believed for so long. Trust me, humans know that better than anyone. But it is possible. The queen looked at Sarah's reflection next to her own in the panel. You are so small compared to me. Soft where I am hard. Simple where I am complex. And yet, you stand here, telling me that I am beautiful. She turned to face Sarah directly. Why? Why do you care whether the Ketheri think well of themselves? Sarah thought about her answer carefully. Because isolating people or species based on how they look is one of the worst things anyone can do. Humans learned that lesson through centuries of pain and conflict. We nearly destroyed ourselves over it. If we can help another species avoid that same suffering, even in a small way, then we should. The queen's compound eyes seemed to glimmer in the light. Then perhaps this cultural exchange will be more significant than either of our peoples anticipated. 3 months had passed since that first meeting in the Queen's audience chamber. Sarah stood in her apartment on the Ketheri orbital station, looking down at the planet below. The view still took her breath away every single morning. So much had changed in such a short time. The cultural exchange treaty had not just been signed. It had been expanded far beyond the original proposal. Human artists were now living on the Ketheri homeworld, learning traditional Ketheri art forms. Ketheri musicians were teaching at universities on Earth. The exchange of literature, philosophy, and scientific knowledge was flowing in both directions. But more than that, something deeper had shifted. Sarah's tablet chimed. She picked it up and saw a message from Peter. You need to see this. Gallery opening in an hour. Meet me at the West Wing. An hour later, Sarah walked into the newest addition to the Orbital Palace, a gallery space that had been created specifically to showcase the work of the human artists who had come to learn from the Ketheri. The room was already filled with people. Both people, Sarah corrected herself with a smile. Both humans and Ketheri. Peter rushed over to her, his camera as always in his hands. Dr. Chun, this is incredible. You have to see Marcus's work. Sarah followed him to a section of the gallery where a series of sculptures stood. She stopped in surprise. Marcus Webb, her military advisor, had always mentioned that he did sculpture as a hobby, but she had never seen his work before. The sculptures were breathtaking. Each one depicted a different Ketheri in various poses and activities. One showed a worker tending to the bioluminescent plants in the palace gardens. Another captured a group of children playing some kind of game. A third portrayed an elderly Ketheri, their shell deep with the patterns of age, sitting in contemplation. But it was the centerpiece that made Sarah's eyes water. It was a sculpture of Queen Shlara, standing tall and regal, her forearms spread in a gesture of welcome. The sculpture caught every detail of her exoskeleton, every pattern, every facet of her eyes. Marcus had carved it from a translucent material that caught the light the way the Queen's own shell did. It's called the Geometry of Grace, Marcus said, appearing beside Sarah. The whole series is. These sculptures are going to be displayed on Earth next month. Major museums are fighting over them. Marcus, these are amazing, Sarah said, genuinely awed. When did you find time to create all this? The Ketheri work schedule includes meditation time. I used it for sculpting instead. He looked at his work with obvious pride. Funny thing, I was so nervous about meeting them at first. Now I can't imagine creating art about anything else. There's so much beauty in their form, so many interesting angles and proportions. A Ketheri female approached them. Sarah recognized her as Dexara, one of the palace artists who had been teaching the humans. Lieutenant Webb, I wanted to thank you again for showing me your techniques. The way you capture light in solid form, it has changed how I approach my own work. Marcus actually looked embarrassed. I learned more from you than you learned from me. Perhaps we learn from each other, Dexara suggested. That is the point of exchange, yes? Sarah left them talking and wandered through the rest of the gallery. The changes went beyond just art. In the past 3 months, she had watched as the relationship between humans and Ketheri had deepened in unexpected ways. Fashion designers on Earth had started creating clothing inspired by Ketheri exoskeleton patterns. The geometric designs were showing up everywhere, in architecture, in technology interfaces, in jewelry. What started as artistic appreciation had become a genuine trend. Young people on Earth were even getting tattoos that mimicked the natural patterns on Ketheri shells. But the most significant change was happening in the wider galaxy. Sarah's tablet chimed again. This time, it was a news alert from the Galactic Network. She opened it and felt her heart swell. The headline read, "Voltorian government issues formal apology to Ketheri Empire." She read quickly through the article. The Voltorian leadership had released a statement acknowledging their historical mistreatment of the Ketheri people. They expressed regret for their prejudice and requested permission to begin cultural exchange programs. The article noted that several other species had issued similar statements in recent weeks. Sarah showed the article to Peter. "This is what we started," she said quietly. "No," a voice said behind her. Sarah turned to find Queen Shalara standing there, wearing ceremonial robes that somehow made her even more striking. "This is what you started, Ambassador Chun, when you refused to accept my self-hatred. When you insisted on seeing beauty where I saw only ugliness. That was the beginning." The Queen gestured to the gallery around them. "This art, these exchanges, the apologies from other species, it all traces back to that first conversation. You taught me to see myself differently. And once I began to see myself with new eyes, others began to notice." Sarah felt her cheeks warm. "Your Majesty, I only told you the truth. Perhaps, but sometimes the truth is the most revolutionary thing one can speak." Shalara moved to stand beside one of Marcus's sculptures. "I have started visiting schools on my homeworld. I show young Ketheri images of human art that celebrates our form. I tell them what you told me, that beauty is not universal and that we should not let others define our worth." "How are they responding?" Sarah asked. "With hope. With pride. Some with disbelief, just as I felt disbelief at first." The Queen's tone was warm now, so different from the bitter voice Sarah had heard 3 months ago. "But they are learning, as I am learning. We are reclaiming something we lost a long time ago, the right to see ourselves as we truly are, not as others perceive us." More guests entered the gallery, and Sarah noticed something that made her smile. There were Ketheri mixed throughout the crowd of humans, and everyone was mingling naturally. Conversations flowed. Laughter, both human and the clicking sound that was Ketheri. Laughter echoed through the space. A young Ketheri child ran up to Shalara, excited about something. The Queen listened patiently, then pointed to one of the sculptures. The child's eyes, all compound facets of them, seemed to light up with wonder. I appeared at Sarah's elbow. "I've been working with the Ketheri Technology Institute, Dr. Chan. The things they're developing, and now that they're collaborating with human engineers. The possibilities are expanding exponentially. They're not just maintaining their technological superiority anymore. They're innovating in ways they say they haven't in centuries. Because they have a reason to," Sarah guessed. "Exactly. One of the lead researchers told me that for years, they developed technology out of necessity, to be useful, to be needed. But now they're creating things out of joy, out of curiosity, out of a desire to share and explore." Yuki's eyes were bright with excitement. That's the difference genuine connection makes. Later that evening, Sarah found herself alone with Queen Shalara on one of the observation decks. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the stars. "I have something for you," Shalara said finally. She held out a small device. It is a holographic message. Private, for you alone. Sarah took the device, curious. Should I play it now? If you wish. Sarah activated it. A hologram of Queen Shalara appeared, but different from the Queen Sarah knew now. This version looked somehow smaller, more uncertain. It took Sarah a moment to realize this was a recording from months ago, probably right after their first meeting. The holographic Shalara spoke. Ambassador Chan. I am recording this because I do not trust my own memory. Today, for the first time in my life, I looked at my reflection and did not immediately feel shame. I saw the patterns you described. I noticed the way the light moves through my shell. I observed the coordination of my limbs without criticizing them. For just a moment, I saw what you see. And it was not displeasing. The hologram paused, and even in recording, Sarah could see the emotion in the Queen's posture. I do not know if this feeling will last. I do not know if I can truly unlearn 3,000 years of believing myself ugly. But I wanted to thank you for giving me this moment. This one moment where I looked at myself and thought, perhaps I am not so terrible after all. The recording ended. Sarah looked at the real Shalara, who was watching her with those impossibly complex eyes. That was 3 months ago, the Queen said. I wanted you to see how far we have come. Not just the Ketheri as a people, but me personally. She gestured to her own body. I still have moments of doubt. Old beliefs die hard, but they are dying. Thanks to you. Sarah felt tears in her eyes. Your Majesty, you did the hard part. You chose to believe. You chose to change. I just offered a different perspective. You offered hope, Shalara corrected. And hope is no small thing. They stood together, human and Ketheri, looking out at the galaxy that was slowly learning what these two had discovered, that beauty comes in countless forms, and the only truly ugly thing is the refusal to see it.